Hi, I'm Monte Kline from the ChristianPersonalRetreat.com website and also the Historic Faith blog at historicfaith.wordpress.com. I want to talk today just briefly about meeting with God 101 and talk about what we call a quiet time and what that's about. My favorite illustration that I use in many different situations goes back to Vince Lombardi, the coach of the Green Bay Packers, who after a particularly bad game stood before the players in the locker room, held up a football and said, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And he made the point that sometimes you have to go back to the basics. And I think as Christians, this is a major problem we have. We get so involved in activities and different ways of approaching the Christian life that we kind of get away from the basics. And when you talk to someone about having a basic quiet time discipline in their life, they sometimes look at you like you just asked them to conjugate a Hebrew verb or something, like it's something really bizarre or strange. Now, you may call it a quiet time, you may call it a devotional time. Different terms have been used for this, depending upon your generation largely. But what we're talking about is a time where you have a daily discipline, hopefully a daily discipline, of meeting with God and doing that through the Word, through the Bible, and through prayer. And just what makes that happen? What makes that work in an effective way? Now, I think a lot of Christians either don't have a daily quiet time, or more often they don't have a really effective one. And that's what I want to address just briefly with a few principles I've learned over the years. Now, my practice, my vocation as an alternative medicine practitioner has me in touch with primarily a Christian clientele. And we run into some interesting situations in terms of different nutritional supplements that, I tell them to take and the scheduling of them. And a common question will be, okay, you want me to take that before breakfast. How long before breakfast? And I say, well, 20, 30 minutes. And they often act like that's a really major inconvenience. So I get the impression that they get up, they immediately eat breakfast, and then they're off to work or something like that. And then the first question, going through my head is, okay, and when do you have your quiet time? Do you have that in the evening, or, what are you doing in the morning? Because my typical pattern is to get up between, 5 and 6 in the morning, spend an hour or upwards of an hour in the quiet time, and then do some other planning for the day and what have you. And eventually, shower and eat and some other things. And then I actually start, working at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. So my practice, my habit has been to have many hours, available in the morning that were preparatory for the day, both spiritually preparatory and preparatory from a business point of view as well. And so I never quite understood people that didn't do that, other than they just didn't get into that habit early on in their Christian life like I did. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my history with quiet times. I would go from one method to another. I remember decades ago, Billy Graham sharing that, okay, here's what I do in the morning. I read 5 Psalms and I read one chapter of the book of Proverbs, and then I pray. Okay, so you do 5 Psalms a day, you do one chapter of Proverbs a day, and then every month you're repeating that same thing, because that routine would last 30 days or so. And so I thought, well, gosh, if Billy Graham does this, it must be a good method. And I tried that and tried, various other methods over the years, but my focus was wrong, because the method is not the issue. The objective, the goal, is really the issue. Now, we have a problem in general as Christians, and that is theologically what we would call works, versus grace. We're constantly going back to relying on activity, relying on doing things rather than being something. God's goal for us is to be something much more than to do something. And yet we constantly want to gravitate back to doing things. So we want a method, we want a formula, we want something that's gonna make it happen. And so we're always looking for that ideal thing. So the struggle between doing and being, and no matter how long you've been a Christian, it's very easy to fall back into the wrong approach with this, where you just get involved in doing a bunch of activities. This can even happen with something like reading through the Bible in a year, which I've done many times. But this year, as I somewhat regularly do, I've chosen not to do that, because I find that if I constantly am wrapping up my quiet time with reading through the Bible in a year, that it tends to end up on a very surface level, a very superficial level, and I'm not really getting to the real heart of the issue, not really getting down to what it means to meet with God. I'm doing something with my head, with my mind, intellectually. I'm reading, I'm reminding myself of stories and promises and so on in the Bible, but am I really getting to the key thing that I want to get to? Now, likewise, prayer can be a problem, and we'll go into prayer on some other videos, but the praying in a quiet time can often just degenerate into a wish list. It's kind of what I call Santa Claus praying. Well, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and God, would you help, so and so that's sick, and on and on and on, and all these things, and it becomes an activity rather than the real pursuit of God, rather than trying to actually meet with God and experience His presence. The real point of having a quiet time is not to read through the Bible in a year, though that can be a good thing to do. It's not to pray a bunch of intercessory prayer for various needs, though that again can be a very good thing to do. The purpose of the quiet time is to meet with God and experience His presence. And so what I've found as I've been, fallen on this area myself, as I've drifted away and just gotten involved in the activity, I've come back to where each day I'm asking myself, okay, have I met with God yet? Have I experienced His presence yet? Or have I just done a bunch of reading in some devotional books or in the scripture, done some, praying on different things? Have I really met with God? The point is to meet with God, to experience His presence. And journaling helps a great deal on that. And you just got to be journaling and recording your impressions and your questions and your pain and your heartaches and your brokenness and all of these things. That helps. But go at it with the objective of, rather than, okay, I need to read this many chapters of the Bible, or I need to read this many Psalms, just take a passage, maybe a passage that fits with circumstances you're going through right now. Maybe it's only one verse. Maybe it's only just one little verse that impresses you, and meditate on that verse for a while. Chew on that verse. Just milk everything you can out of that. Focus on that area until God's really speaking to you, until you've experienced His presence. You'll know when you have. You'll know when you have, because you'll have insight into that situation. You will feel touched by His Word, by the impressions of His Spirit relative to that situation. And I encourage you, to the extent that you possibly can, just to wait on God for that. And that may mean you just wait in silence and just pondering a scripture, meditating on a scripture, but waiting on Him, for Him to show Himself to you, because that is really the point of a quiet time. And so I hope this helps give you some understanding from my experience of what not to do the wrong objectives and the right objective with having a quiet time. And I hope God blesses you greatly through this. Thanks for watching.